Good morning. Subcommittee of Transportation and Infrastructure, Water Resource and Environment Subcommittee will convene. At this time, I'd like to welcome General Walsh of our testimony here. The committee hearing today is a review of the United States Army Corps of Engineers Chief Reports. And at this time, I want to ask unanimous consent that members not on the committee be permitted to sit with the committee in today's hearing. Hearing no objections, so ordered. And at this time, I want to yield time to our chairman of the full T&I committee, Chairman Shuster, for any opening remarks you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you letting me go first. I have probably about a 14-hour day in the Armed Services Committee day. I hope it's only 14 hours, but we'll see. And also I'd like to welcome Congressman Kramer, Representative Kramer from North Dakota, who has a keen interest in what the Corps does, and welcome here today to sit at the dais and listen in. Today's hearing, again, I want to say thank you to General Walsh. Thank you first for your service, and I know you're going off to greener pastures later in the year, so we really appreciate your service, and thanks for being here today, as well as Mr. Brown. Thank you for being here. Look forward to hearing from you. Today's hearing will play a valuable role in the committee's development of Water Resources Development Act, or known as WRDA. Based on extensive studies, Chief's reports make final recommendations to authorize specific construction activities, and that, I understand, is a Chief's report. That's the first I've seen of them. I've heard how large they are and how extensive they are, but seeing is believing. This hearing will bring greater transparency to the process, and will provide the committee the opportunity to closely examine currently pending Chiefs reports. It is critical for Congress to re-engage in the development of the nation's water. Congress must have a role in determining agency priorities and ensuring we fulfill our constitutional responsibilities. Over the last few months, we've held a number of public educational forums, roundtables, and hearings on the Corps of Engineers program. I thank Chairman Gibbs for all his hard work in putting this together and participating. While it once took, the themes that have emerged from these public forums include the importance of project prioritization, public-private partnerships, empowering non-federal project sponsors, and especially study acceleration. While it once took the Corps 3 to 5 years to complete a study, it has now become the norm for the Corps to take 10, 12, or even 15 years to produce a study. And it's no wonder it takes so much time, since the Corps, by law and regulation, has to review and detail many different alternatives. Just because a study is costly, complex, and long does not necessarily mean it's a better project. This is not necessarily the fault of the Corps of Engineers. The agency has to clear hurdles placed in their way by other federal agencies like the Department of Interior, and in some cases, non-federal project sponsors have difficulties on their end. Congress has only enacted 2 WRDA laws in the last 14 years. And we have many goals we want to accomplish in WRDA, but one of the most important is to get WRDA back to a 2-year cycle to ensure Congress has a fundamental role in the development of the Corps of Engineers projects and in the oversight of the agency. Again, that is absolutely, for me, critical that we get back on a 2-year process. There's no reason we can't, as long as we all dedicate ourselves to working towards that goal. I want to again thank Chairman Gibbs for holding the hearing, and again, General Walsh, thank you for being here today, and thank you so much for your service to the nation, and your wife's service to the nation, because I know that's she's been there by your side all along. So again, thank you, and I yield back my time.
Thank you, Chairman Shuster, and also thank you for your interest and your hard work, too, and working on this WRDA bill that really needs to be done to improve our economic competitiveness and move our commerce up, especially our exports and job creation. At this time, I yield time to Ranking Member Tim Bishop for any comments he may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I, too, welcome General Walsh and his colleagues, and I thank you very much for your service to our country. Let me begin with a very simple statement. The Water Resources Development Act can create jobs and can provide critical protection and support for our communities, our businesses, and our future. Over the last 6 months, this committee has had roundtables, listening sessions, discussions with stakeholders, meetings with the Corps of Engineers, and has held hearings, all with the intent of working towards developing a viable path forward on a WRDA bill. Congress has been integral to the planning and construction of water resources projects since our nation's founding. From the authorization of aids to navigation in the 1700s through the passage of several Rivers and Harbors Acts in the 1900s to the enactment of the first Water Resources Development Act in 1974, Congress has established an ordered process for integrating needed policy, direction, and project authorization. The original goal was to have a water bill every 2 years, an ordered process that would support a definitive water management process. Since 1974, a period of almost 40 years, we have had 10 subsequent WRDAs, not quite the 2-year average Congress had envisioned. Our challenge is that the last successful WRDA was in 2007, and now we are faced with substantial hurdles with respect to water infrastructure needs, increasing numbers of water-related disasters, national financial challenges, and reluctance by this body to provide project-specific guidance to the administration. We have heard repeatedly from members of Congress and the public on the importance of WRDA to the nation and to our local communities. No one has questioned the value of a well-designed, constructed, and managed Corps of Engineers project, whether they are for flood control, navigation, storm damage reduction, or environmental restoration. The cumulative assemblage of these projects helps the nation. Our responsibility in this committee, and especially in this subcommittee, is to authorize water projects and direct the mission of the Corps of Engineers. If we do not perform that responsibility, we end up with two things happening. One, the administration ends up prioritizing projects, often on an entirely different set of metrics than what we as members of Congress would want. And two, the process becomes more convoluted and time-consuming, resulting in inefficiencies and frustration. Let me reiterate. A well-constructed and legislatively designed WRDA bill will provide jobs, provide direction, and most importantly, allow water projects to be constructed that will protect our communities, their economy, and their lives. Nothing could be more important for us to do. Today's hearing is about the process that the Corps goes through to develop, review, and ultimately authorize Chief of Engineers reports. These Chief's reports become the vehicle for Congress to authorize a select group of new projects and get in line for appropriations to actually construct them. Hearings this Congress have focused on several of the policy-related issues that may be addressed in this WRDA. This hearing is focused on addressing the 25 yet unauthorized Chiefs reports. I wish to state clearly and unequivocally, a successful WRDA must include more than just policy and Chiefs reports. We have to find a way to address specific projects for flood control, hurricane and storm damage reduction, navigation, harbors and waterways, environmental restoration, and water supply. This requires that we provide the Corps with adequate resources and direction. The bottom line is that we have to do more, and by doing more, we will create jobs that will help sustain our nation's financial recovery. Today, we are going to hear about the amount of time that it takes to get a Chiefs report developed and shepherded through the process. The Chiefs report list today includes 25 vetted and administratively approved projects. We've had some good discussions with our colleagues across the aisle and with Corps technical staff to look for ways to make the process more efficient. While we all may have our own ideas about why it takes so long, in the case of some of these Chiefs reports, upwards of 10 years to make it through the system, one thing has become clear to me, and that is we have met the enemy and it is us. Congress and our desire to help direct the administrative activities of the Corps of Engineers has set up a long, convoluted, multi-step process to move projects from planning to construction. We, the Congress, have overlaid a project process largely developed by technical experts with one developed by politicians, overlaid by yet another that is defined by the reality of the appropriations process, overlaid by yet another process, the budget oversight approach performed behind closed doors by the Office of Management and Budget. The end result is a mind-numbing, convoluted, multi-layered flow chart that now includes a minimum of 21 major steps along the journey. We have aided and abetted in the creation of this convoluted and time-consuming approach, and we now have a chance to move ahead if we work together. In summary, our approach can be captured in 3 simple bullets. The Water Resources Development Act is designed to work most efficiently when it is done under regular order, with Congress providing leadership on moving specific projects in a timely manner. WRDA works when projects are funded at the appropriate levels, not nickel and dimed over 10 years and done in spurts and starts. WRDA works best when Congress, not the administration, determines project priorities and when it is done in a bipartisan way. We are committed to working with the chairman of both the subcommittee and the full committee and staff to develop a WRDA bill that will meet the needs of the American people, our colleagues, and the administration. I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. I'll yield myself time for an opening statement. First, I'd like to welcome General Walsh and also thank him for his service as he looks for retirement here in October. I think the Corps is going to lose a huge asset. Today we are holding a hearing to review the Army Corps of Engineers Chief's reports, the process the Corps undertakes to develop these projects, and some of the steps the Corps is carrying out internally to accelerate the process. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is the federal government's largest water resources development and management agency. The Corps began its water resources program in the 1800s when Congress, for the first time, appropriated money for improving our river navigation. Today, the Corps of Engineers constructs projects for the purpose of navigation, flood control, beach erosion control, and shoreline protection, hydroelectric power, recreation, water supply, environmental protection, restoration, and enhancement, and fish and wildlife mitigation. The Corps of Engineers planning process considers economic development and environmental needs as it addresses water resources problems. The planning process addresses the nation's water resources needs in a system context and explores a full range of alternatives in developing solutions. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is subject to all federal statutes, including the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act, and all previous Water Resources Development Acts, Flood Control Acts, and Rivers and Harbors Acts. These laws and associated regulations and guidance provide the legal basis for the Corps of Engineers planning process. For instance, when carrying out a feasibility study, the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, requires the Corps of Engineers include an identification of significant environmental resources likely to be impacted by the proposed project, an assessment of the impacts, a full disclosure of likely impacts, and a consideration of a full range of alternatives, including a no-action alternative and action by other alternatives. NEPA also requires a 30-day public review of any draft document and a 30-day public review of any final document produced by the Corps of Engineers. Additionally, when carrying out a feasibility study, the Clean Water Act requires an evaluation of the potential impacts of a proposed project or action and requires a letter from a state agency ensuring the proposed project or action complies with state water quality standards. The Army Corps of Engineers also has to formulate alternative plans to ensure all reasonable alternatives are evaluated, including plans that maximize net national economic development benefits and other plans that incorporate other federal, state, and local concerns. Mitigation of adverse impacts is to be included in each of the alternative plans reviewed in the study. The Corps of Engineers is also responsible for identifying areas of risk and uncertainty in the study, so decisions can be made with some degree of reliability on the estimated cost and benefits of each alternative plan. Typically, a plan recommended by the Corps of Engineers is a plan with the greatest net economic benefit consistent with protection of the nation's environment. However, the Corps does have the discretion to recommend another alternative if there's overriding reasons for recommending another plan based on other federal, state, and local concerns. By now, many of us have seen the actual size of a typical studies carried out by the Corps of Engineers. On the desk down here on the dais is a one feasibility study from a Louisiana coastline that's 9,000 pages. You can see it stacked up there. While these are complex projects that need to be reviewed by the public and other state and federal agencies, the level of analysis required by other laws and regulations are crippling the project delivery process. For example, the study of the Sabines-Natchez Waterway Navigation Project was authorized in June 1997, and the Chief's report was transmitted to Congress in July of 2011. According to the feasibility study of the Sabines-Natchez Waterway Navigation Projects, more than 120 alternatives at 9 different depths were evaluated prior to a completed Chief's report. We are literally studying infrastructure projects to death, but this is not solely the fault of the Corps of Engineers. Congress needs to change the way the Corps of Engineers carries out its business. It is no longer acceptable that these studies take dozens of years to complete. Ultimately, the federal taxpayer is on the hook for these studies and for the length of time it takes to carry them out, delaying the benefits these projects are ultimately supposed to provide. As we move forward with what will be a policy-heavy Water Resources Development Act, we will be focusing on accelerating the study and project delivery process, as well as better prioritizing these worthwhile investments that the American public has relied on for decades. This time, again, I want to welcome General Walsh as our our one-person panel, but he's also accompanied today. Well, first of all, General Walsh is the Deputy Commanding General for Civil and Emergency Operations of the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and he's also accompanied today by Mr. Theodore Tad Brown. He's the Chief Planning and Policy for the Army Corps of Engineers. So, General Walsh, welcome again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. I really am honored, and it's a privilege to be testifying before you today to discuss the planning process and the Chief's reports for the Army Corps of Engineers. My full testimony will describe all 21 reports that have been favorably completed through the executive branch review since enactment of the WERD of 2007. These proposals fall within the main missions of the Corps of Engineers, and all of them will provide a net benefit to the nation. I want to take the time here to discuss the 4 campaign goals of the Corps of Engineers, and specifically the efforts we're making to transform the Civil Works program. First, we must support the warfighter with our work in areas of operations underneath the combatant commanders and on U.S. installations around the world. Many of our deployed civilians have civil work experience which supports the mission in the theater, and this work also provides them a broadening experience that will assist them and us when they return from harm's way. Second, we must transform Civil Works by modernizing the project planning process, enhancing the budget development process, using a smart infrastructure strategy to evaluate our portfolio of water resource projects, and improving our methods of delivery. Third, we must reduce disaster risk and continue to respond to natural disasters under the National Response Framework, as well as our ongoing efforts and authorities under flood risk management. Fourth, we must prepare for tomorrow, positioning our workforce and processes for the future challenges and focusing on research and development efforts that will help solve the nation's greatest challenges in both the in the Army and in the nation. The Corps has been working to better equip the Civil Works program to effectively meet the current and future needs, and ensuring that decision makers are fully informed. The Corps planning process modernization effort emphasizes execution, instills accountability, and improves the organizational and operational model to produce quality products that address the water resource priorities. The current focus of our planning modernization effort is to facilitate the timely completion of decision documents that appropriately address the increasingly complex water problems that plague communities and constrain economic activity. The Corps has recognized the need to modernize its approach through its initiative that we call SMART planning. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, risk-informed, and timely. The SMART planning approach is to investigations reduces resource requirements by appropriately focusing on the key drivers to resolving water resource problems while complying with all the applicable laws and regulations. The goal under SMART planning is to complete most feasibility studies within 3 years for $3 million or less. The end product is a decision document that has been fully coordinated by all 3 levels inside the Corps of Engineers, our organization. In shorthand, we call this goal 3 by 3 by 3. The Corps expects full implementation of this new approach in fiscal year 2014 and has been working with its federal and non-federal partners to use this new approach in evaluating water resource problems. The Corps is prioritizing its current portfolio of planning studies and applying this new approach to new and ongoing studies, thus reducing the number of active studies in its portfolio and focusing on efforts of completing these studies more effectively by prioritizing funding. Ensuring the continued performance of key features of our infrastructure is becoming more costly over time. Operational demands have also grown and changed, particularly over the past 30 years, creating additional stress, and we're working on the infrastructure strategy to address these growing needs. The infrastructure strategy incorporates 4 focus areas: integrated approach to asset management, managing the system over its life cycle, evaluating whether a project or group of projects or related projects should remain a federal responsibility prior to substantially furthering investment in that project, and potentially looking at alternative financing mechanisms. Transforming the way we deliver civil works program requires state-of-the-art processes and highly skilled workforce that is capable of responding to current and future demands. The strategy is to have a reliable and efficient methods of delivery by linking technical capabilities to uniform national standards, maintaining core competencies, and having consistent methods and processes throughout the Corps. The Corps has a strong tradition of working collaboratively with non-federal interests and plan to deliver products. The current transformation initiative is no different. Our transformation partners include states, tribes, local governments, non-government organizations, nonprofit agencies, and the public. These partnerships are increasing and will likely continue to increase as we share a common goal of looking at reliable and resilient infrastructure for our nation. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my statement, and again, I appreciate the opportunity to address today.
Thank you. I'll start around questions here. You know, we talk about the process, and sometimes there's been multi-purpose projects. You know, a navigation project and an eco restoration project in conjunction. And I was kind of wondering, some of these projects, especially with the economic downturn we've been experiencing. Let's give an example. If we have a port for a deepening project, which we know we have major challenges to a lot of projects that way, should it be bootstrapped with a restoration project, ecosystem restoration project, or can we break these projects up and focus on the economic ones to help, you know, move our economy along, and really look at the economic benefit? And not saying there's nothing the matter with environmental benefits, but if we can get an economic benefit right quickly by focusing on that project and maybe you know, laying off the rest of the complex projects. Does the Corps see itself moving that way to, you know, to look at the benefits, both economic and environmental, and to say, you know, if we get this part of the project going, we can get this part done, and then maybe work on the latter later when the resources become available, especially if the partnership with the local sponsor is having challenges meeting their obligations for their cost share.
Yes, sir. On a particular project, we have three major missions in the Corps, as you know: flood risk reduction, navigation, and ecosystem restoration. So, as we put forward the President's budget request, we look at a balanced approach in making sure the portfolio is funded in all three of those major missions. In a specific project that has different features, we work along with the local sponsors in putting together a schedule that tries to meet all of the requirements in that balanced project.
Okay. I noticed in these 25 chiefs reports we'll have here today for us, it's a total about $14 billion of, you know, proposed spending. And I noticed on the navigation side, it's about 2.1 million. Environmental restoration is about 4 times that. Flood control is about 4 billion. So basically what we're looking at environmental restoration 4 times more, navigation twice as much on flood control. Can you comment why there's such a discrepancy, difference in the numbers? You know, when you have 4 times more navigation, twice as much in flood control, why that would, you know, come about that way? Especially when you consider the challenges we have out there on our infrastructure, on the, you know, rebuilding and refurbishing our hard assets.
Chairman, I don't know. Well, I think they came in because that's how the chief's report were completed. They were not, as far as I know, directed one way or another. I know that there's more chief's reports that are out there that will be coming in between now and the end of the year that will change that ratio drastically as well.
But you are aware that
yeah.
You know, the ratios are seen
yes.
way out of place there. On your SMART process, you talk about smart planning. I have a chart here, the Civil Works project delivery process. It's geez, I don't know, 20-some step process that could take, I don't know how many years, maybe 15 years, 7 years to get a use report. Is that typical, right?
Sure.
Is there anything, are you familiar with this?
Yes, sir.
Is there any in your SMART or your 3x3 that you can combine some of these different areas and condense them, or what do you have any recommendations?
Yes, sir. The key item that we're looking underneath the SMART planning is to make sure that we have the scope of the project scoped realistically. Many times we have looked at a lot of alternatives that may have not quickly gone to a solution that's required by the project. So I'm not looking at particularly cutting out particular processes there, but making sure we get through them more rapidly by putting together a planning charrette, which is basically a product where we bring all three levels of the Corps of Engineers, the headquarters, the division, and the district. We come and look at that scope rapidly, make sure that we agree with them all, so that we give direction to the district to move forward more rapidly.
Now let me just interrupt you right there, General. I've got a question on that. When you bring the district, the region, and the D.C. headquarters together, I assume the purpose is so everybody's looking at the same time, so it's not going through one level and then they don't know about it. But I guess my concern would be, if it's done right, I think it makes sense. But my concern would be is that we don't have just a top-driven system from Washington that overrides and doesn't let the process work either. So, you know, I'm really concerned about one-size-fits-all policies coming out of this town. So if if they're all looking at the same time to, speed up the time, that makes sense. But I'd have a concern about, taking the local and the regional more out of the picture of the decision-making process. How do you see that fitting?
Sir, the local sponsor who typically comes up with a good deal of the funding has significant control of the process. When we go through the planning charrette, it's looking at the different alternatives and whether they're going to have policy issues as they bring things forward, but also to look at risk assessments on if there is a particular area a particular solution that they want to bring forward. There's half a dozen risks that you need to identify and work through to get through the policy review that we do here at the headquarters.
Since I think you've been in this position a little over a year now.
Yes, sir.
What have you? I think you've made some work to speed up some of these processes. What have you seen? The backlog. How are we doing on the backlog?
Sir, what we've been working on specifically is the planning process, and what we had was about 650 feasibility reports that were out there in various shapes, many of them unfunded for many years. So we went through a process of putting these projects that were active into an inactive status and took those off the shelf. We reduced that to about 200. And we'll be funding those that are closest to being complete. We'll put the priority on those, finish those, and get to the next one.
That makes a lot of sense. My time is up. I yield to Ranking Member Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Walsh, thank you very much. Just to pick up on one of the points that the chairman made in his question. He cited the chief reports that are post-war to 2007. The 14 chiefs reports that we're getting in between now and December 31st, their breakdown, navigation 21%, environment 14%, flood risk management 43%, and hurricane and storm damage 21%. So it just shows the difference that you had one crop that had a density in the environment. We now have another crop that has a density in flood risk management. So I would imagine that that's typical in terms of how projects distribute themselves over a period of time. Is that about right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Thank you. General Walsh, you've been perhaps the prime mover of the 3x3x3 process. It's been in place now for about 3 years. Can you identify with some degree of specificity how it's actually worked? Has it improved the efficiency? Has it reduced the time it takes to move a project from the point where it's initiated to the point where it's ready for construction or actually under construction?
Yes, sir. I believe that it will move the process forward in regards to getting a chief's report, mostly because we'll have the full vertical team. That's the division headquarters, my headquarters, and the district working before a project starts in what we call a planning charrette to make sure that we're looking at all the alternative solutions to a particular project. So really what we're looking at is start at the start, make sure that we've got scope realistically what the possible solutions are. We then we put together a risk register, those things that we have looked at but we think are not going to be a major player in a particular project. We'll put a risk register together, say we looked at that particular issue and don't believe it's going to be a major part of the project, so people understand that we've looked at that particular issue and pushed it and moved it off to the side. So yes, I think we're going to move things more rapidly as we move into a decision type of report, not getting so much data just to fill the report up and look at a lot of different things. What are the minimum things that I need to look at for the decision maker to make a decision? And so we've been looking at a more efficient and effective way of doing planning for a number of different chiefs. General Strock was looking at that specifically, General Van Antwerp as well, and General Bosick has adopted this approach in his campaign plan. So the 3x3 method of planning modernization is codified in the chief's campaign plan.
What impact, if any, has the 3x3x3 approach had with respect to the process followed by other federal agencies with respect to Corp-related projects?
So we're working with the other federal agencies, both here in Washington and at the local level, on explaining to them how the process works as we move from decision to decision. And so I think we're working together closely.
Okay, thank you. It remains the case, does it not? And please correct me if I'm wrong, that the biggest impediment to moving a core project from its initiation to its completion is the funding source, whether it be the funding source from the federal government or whether it be funding from the non-federal partner with which the Corps is working. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The stop and start funding certainly hurts or increases the duration of a study.
Okay. So when I said in my opening remarks that we have met the enemy and it is us, in part what I was referring to was a process that we have imposed on the Corps coupled with the process that exists in other federal agencies. But the other is that we're simply not giving you sufficient resources to do the jobs that we've tasked you with doing. Is that correct?
It's two things, sir. One, a lot of projects throughout the U.S. and trying to get to them all with the limited funds that we have. What we're looking at now is taking those projects that are closest to completion, give those a little bit more on the budget priority, knock them out, and go to the next one. But certainly, how much funds we put on a project significantly impacts its duration.
Okay. Thank you. My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Crawford, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Walsh, thank you for being here today. In your testimony, you mentioned the need for the Corps to prioritize federal funding on the highest performing projects and studies. Could you give us a little more detail on how the Corps measures the performance of pending projects and studies?
There's a number of metrics that we look at. Certainly, one that we move forward with through the administration and over here is the net economic number, the cost-benefit ratio. But that's just one of the items that we look at. We also look at impacts to the environment and a number of other ratios as well, sir.
What role does the Corps Division and District Office play in determining priority projects?
So when we were looking at the 600 projects that were on the shelf, I asked the division and district commanders specifically which ones that they would not be able to continue because of funding or a non-federal sponsor, and they sent back to us which ones they were not able to move forward. So they're clearly inside the loop and prioritizing.
Okay. Let me shift gears a little bit. Can you give me your assessment of the MR&T Mississippi River and Tributaries project?
Well, sir, could you repeat that question, sir?
Your assessment of the MR&T.
Yes, sir. My assessment is that it's been quite successful from a systems approach. In 1928, after the 27 flood, the chief of engineers at that time decided to look at the lower Mississippi from a systems approach. The nation has invested about $13 billion over the last 60 years on that project, and it has prevented hundreds of billions of dollars worth of flood damages. In 2011, when we had the high flows, record high flows, we had to open up all three floodways down on that so that we were able to move water laterally and not stack it up and lose some of our major cities. In 1927, there were hundreds of, tens of thousands of people lost their lives. In 2011, there was no one that lost their lives due to the flood because of that project.
So, and how would you gauge the recovery of the MR&T in light of the 2000 flooding that took place? Has it recovered pretty well?
General Peabody has been repairing the levees and using the funds that have been appropriated during the supplemental rapidly, and so I think it's recovering very well. Right now, there's heavy flows, heavy water down in the lower Mississippi, and hasn't been significantly impacted from the damages that we had from 2011.
Excellent. And finally, in October 2012, the Corps began reducing lock hours of operation due to stagnant funding and the need to address a growing list of maintenance projects. Is it currently possible for the Corps to accept non-federal funds to increase the hours of operation of Corps-operated locks?
So we're looking at that specifically as how to address the concern where we have what I call levels of service. If you have over 1,000 lockages a year, then we'll continue to provide the 24/7 service that many folks have gotten used to. If you have less than that, then we're reducing those levels of service on a graduated scale. We've got a team trying to figure out how to pull together a public-private partnership on how to transfer some of those lockage responsibilities to someone else.
Thank you, General, and congratulations on your retirement. Thank you for your service. Yield back.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Napolitano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to dovetail, General, and thank you for your service and good luck in your retirement.
Thanks, sir.
One of the things that is not spoken to is the sequestration impact on your staff, on your ability to move some of the projects. And if you were to, by some crystal ball magic or something, get the money to do the projects that need to be done, would you have the trained personnel to do it? It's tremendously important that we have trained people. I look at really to be a master, you need three things: you need education, you need training, and you need experience. And a lot of our staff have that. But a lot of them are reaching that mature age and moving on to other places. So we are revamping our training, particularly in the planners, in the planning community. And Mr. Tabb is putting that training together now, and we're requiring that planners be certified in the work that they do. So it is possible you may not have enough experienced personnel to carry out some of the projects if you did have some of the funding.
What we do, Congresswoman, is what we call methods of delivery. If the planners in one particular district don't have the experience needed to bring a feasibility study home, they will go to other districts that have that trained personnel that can get that work accomplished.
So borrowing from Peter to pay Paul?
No, actually, it's to work that experience part. And so those people who have a lot of experience, let's get them in there, and they'll bring the folks who have not done a feasibility study along with them. But certainly the sequestration has required us to put $253 million off to the side for the sequestration bill, which is significantly impacting the water resources.
Thank you for the answer. The fact that in my area we've had a problem with raising levees, and one of the water agencies wanted to participate and be able to help pay for the study. And we were finding it very hard to have the Corps accept money. So that should be a priority, because there are entities that are willing to work, financially support a project, or at least to increase the state portion of it to be able to get it done because of many factors: security, the environmental, keeping more water captured, etc.
Yes, we have an ability to do that. It's called contributed funds, and there is a process where we are taking sponsors' funds above what they're required, making sure we bring it through the committees who are have oversight on those, and we are accepting their funds.
I'd love to have some of that information, General. The other question, from your experience, has the Chief's report development process provided a viable process to address critical procedure or construction issues? And are there examples of where your report development process has uncovered concerns that have led to a project either being rescoped or abandoned?
Yes, Congresswoman. As we try to find solutions to the challenges that are out there, we will find where the solution costs more than the problem. We call it the national economic number. The BC ratio is less than 1, and then we'll stop work on that particular project. So yes, there are as we go through the process, there are some that drop out because there's not a viable solution that we, the Corps, can be involved with.
Well, from your experience, does the Chief's report development process capture or review the necessary technical and financial issues that are important for the implementation of most cost and time-effective Corps construction projects? If not, can you identify where additional oversight or review could be value-added?
Congressman, we by word of 2007 have an independent technical review of our work on particular projects that are over $45 million or are contentious. So Congress required us to do that, and so we do have outside folks come and take a look at our work. Since Congress put that into place, we've executed 29 projects going through the independent expert review panel at about $9 million worth of cost. Most of those reviews have not changed anything in our reports in regards to the solutions. They have recommended a number of different areas that we tell the story slightly differently as we put our reports together.
Thank you for your answers, Mr. Chair. I yield back. Come over.
Mr. Denham.
Thank you. Good morning, General. It's a project the Corps has been working on prior to my time in my 3 years in Congress, and even prior to my 8 years before that in the State Senate. I've continued to work with them before I was in elected office, and now for nearly 11 years that I've been in elective office. And my question is not so much on the project as much as it is on the process. And you presided over a Civil Works Review Board on March 27th, and that resulted in a unanimous vote on Orostimba Creek, the project that I'm talking about. And as you know, this project has been long overdue, and many of the new smart planning techniques that you discuss in your testimony eventually applied to this study. So my question is, can you discuss the challenges that had led up to the delay in completing Orostimba Creek and how your new planning techniques were applied to get over the finish line, ultimately leading to a planning award that you received for the project? And secondly, do you think Orostimba can be used as an example for legacy projects going forward?
Thank you, Congressman. Yes, part of the delay was the funding stream that came in for that particular project. It would start and stop 100,000 one year, 50,000 the next year. The following year wouldn't be any funds, and so that caused a lot of concerns. Another good portion of that project was the local sponsors wanted to find a solution that was not viable, and so we looked for pretty much a dam or flood storage up in the foothills, and we had to look at that from an engineering perspective, also from an environmental perspective, and its impact on California water. And it took a number of years to look at that and describe, as mentioned by Congresswoman Napolitano, that solution is not viable, and so it took a while to get through that, and finally they came up with the solution that they delivered to the CivWorks Review Board 2 weeks ago, and it's an excellent product. And we'll put that out for state and agency review now, and it is about this thick. It's about 100 pages of what's needed to make that decision.
So now that the study's been released for the 30-day state and agency review, when do you anticipate a completed chief's report?
We'll put it out for public comments, address those comments, and suspect we'll have a chief's report by the end of the year.
And going forward, what do you believe is the best course for Congress to take in authorizing new projects and ensuring they are completed in a timely manner?
The process is to put together a worder and authorize the reports that the Chief of Engineers has gone through extraordinary details in making sure that they're complete and together. Before that report comes to Congress, we do a district quality control, make sure that that's completed from a quality control point of view. We take that report and bring it to another district to review it again, and we call that agency technical review. And then we have policy reviews up here at the headquarters. Twice it goes out for public review, state and agency review. And so by the time it comes over here as a chief's report through the administration, we are giving you an excellent product. What I usually call the chief's report is the gold standard for Congress to authorize through a WRDA process.
And as we're moving through the WRDA process, is there anything that you can see that can help us to make this process more efficient, more streamlined, things that you would need congressional authorization for?
So there's a number of items that we're working on as we're trying to streamline and husband the funds that we do have. We have a lot of projects that we should be looking at and perhaps seeing whether they should be deauthorized or repurposed or taking off the federal books because they're not providing a federal return. So we're looking on the deauthorization process and how can we through the administration figure out how to work that particular process. The other things that we're looking at, sir, is alternative financing. Is there a way for others to finance if we're not going to be able to get a steady stream through the federal appropriations process? Maybe others can do that, very similar to here in Virginia. They have a public-private partnership where the private organization has built portions of the highway and are being reimbursed from a different process. So there's a number of different areas that's not quite ready for us to share, but we're still working on those things as we move forward.
And a final very quick question. Are dams no longer viable in California under the Corps' opinion?
Not sure how to answer that. I think those dams that I worked on when I was a district commander in San Francisco and Sacramento, they were needed for its intended purpose. There are some projects that its intended purpose is no longer necessary, and they should be transferred probably off of federal books to somebody else who does need those particular projects. But I couldn't say from a blanket statement that any dam's not needed.
Thank you. I'll follow up in writing and more specifics on my question. Thank you. Yield back.
Representative Frankel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And one of the reasons I'm sitting here is because projects that Army Corps is working on are very, very essential to the economy of South Florida, where I represent, and also the health and safety. Because, just for example, Everglades restoration, major dredging projects in our ports are very, very important. And I want to just say to both the chairman and the ranking member that I agree with both of your statements. And I'm glad that we're stepping up to the plate to take responsibility, because just from my experience working back home, the process of getting a chief's report is, you just can pull your hair out of your head, really. I guess that's the best way I can explain it, without attributing blame, because I always think that Congress should take the responsibility and therefore streamline this process and fund it where it's appropriate. But I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both. That perhaps certainly we're not doing our job with the funding, but it seems to me that we have created some roadblocks, maybe overprotectiveness in certain areas that we could really give a little bit of a leeway. And Mr. Chair, I wanted also to comment. I know the approach the Senate has taken, which is basically, it seems to me, to give away our responsibility on these projects by, I think they have said that they're going to authorize any project that has a chief's report. And from my point of view, I'll say from South Florida, I mean, we've been waiting, for example, for a chief's report in Port Everglades for more than a dozen years. I don't know, maybe 15 years or so. I think we're on track now, but maybe not to be finished till the end of the year. And it's a dredging project. With the expansion of Panama Canal, we really can't afford not to have an opportunity to be authorized, just for the amount of money.
Yield for a minute? Would you yield? I believe the Senate Word of Bill gives any chief's report that's go through a chief's report, gives OMB the ability to move it forward. The Senate Word of Bill actually delegates our I believe, our congressional responsibility to the executive branch as in a 3-year time frame, my understanding. So I believe that's what you're referring to.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
okay.
Right. That's correct. So, I mean, I think that, well, I think we should keep the authority, Mr. Chairman. But I'm concerned about the timing of getting these chiefs' reports out and getting these projects authorized. And I wanted to emphasize the fact with the Panama Canal expansion, I think in 2015, is that the projected date that, ports like Port Everglades and there's others really need to get moving on these dredging projects. So one of the questions, so I have a very sort of simple question, which is without an authorization in this particular Congress, if we actually do pass legislation, is it true that that you cannot go to the next, even if you get a chief's report, let's say by the end of the year, that you cannot go on to the next stage of the planning and the design? That we'd have to wait for another bill, another authorization? To
get into construction, we would have to have the project authorized. There is a process where we can start planning, engineering, and design
to do some of the work prior to that. But again, from a funding level, there's less and less ability to put planning, engineering, design funds on a project before it's authorized.
Thank you. And just, Mr. Chair, I just would urge that I agree with your. I absolutely agree with your comments that we need to streamline what's going on, but I hope that we will not use that as an excuse not to move some of these very important projects forward. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Hanna?
Thank you, Chairman. Of the total number of projects that you work on, how many fit within the 3x3 criteria?
Congressman, it's going to start in fiscal year 14, although everybody has, or most of the districts have taken and wrapped up with the ideas of smart planning, looking at making sure we have the scope down correctly and moving forward. The direction from the chief out to the field is if you want to be in the budget request in the 14-15, that you need to have your project rescoped using the 3x3 method. So
but what does that look like in real terms? I mean, how many? You certainly can look backwards and figure out how many projects would fit into that criteria. So, as a percentage, what does it really cover? And are we avoiding the vast number of much larger projects that are even more important, letting them fall to the 8, 10, 12, 15-year timeline?
No, those projects will be in the 3x3 methods, with the exception of watershed approaches, which we're still looking at how to streamline a watershed study.
Mm-hmm. You use from the 1974 Public Law 93-251 a discount rate for water, this is in your testimony, Water Resource Development Act of 7%. You mentioned that this is not the same discount rate as used by the executive branch for budgeting and economic benefits. How do you since it's almost 40 years old, how accurate is that, and how much sense does it make to have two discount rates out there?
Sir, as we put together the chief's reports, we use the current rate, and as it goes through the administration, they use the 7% as they try to I guess equalize the projects that were finished 7 or 8 years ago or 30 years ago to those projects that are coming through now.
How much time is spent spinning your wheels around a project that's funded and takes over 5 years, and during the process is actually the funding is lost and not refunded?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Congress funds these projects for a period of time, and clearly that time span in many cases before the process can be studied has expired. What does that mean in real terms to you?
Certainly, it slows the project down, both federal and non-federal funding. So if there's not a steady stream of efficient funding, the project continues to be inefficient and not able to deliver on its benefits.
But does it also suggest, because you take so long to study these, that the process shouldn't even be started unless the funding is guaranteed through the entire timeline?
We use the funds that's appropriated until they're expired, and then
hope for the best,
and then put a project on hold and for lack of funds.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Holmes Norton.
Actually, the question of my colleague went to one of my major concerns. Given the number of projects that have been fortunate enough to be started, but not completed, is the process of funding depend upon annual appropriations or upon funding in your, that you've set aside somehow in your own budget?
Typically, Congresswoman, that's from an annual perspective, but there's a number of caveats that if you have funds that you didn't expend in 1 year, you can carry that over and keep the project going with carryover funds as well.
I'm wondering what happens if a project is started, no funding for a number of years. I very much appreciate the new approach. It seems to me a common sense approach. I don't see how it could have been avoided in the first place, of going to those who were closest to completed. But the very fact that you're only doing that now suggests that you weren't doing that before. And if you weren't doing that before, and you had all of these uncompleted projects, how did you keep the funds from being wasted? How were you funding these projects if you weren't going to the ones that were closest to being completed?
Congresswoman, each of the projects that we move forward was with the idea that we're going to bring them to conclusion. As we're putting together a planning study, we're doing engineering analysis, we're doing real estate analysis, we're doing flood economics, environmental, and all of that data is still there and available. And if we can't use it to move forward with a federal project, perhaps the locals can use that.
You know, I'm interested in projects that may have been started and not completed. I mean, how many projects are out there that have been started and for lack of funding have not moved forward?
Many.
Now, if you ever get back to such a project, don't you find that some of the work has to be repeated, or that there's been deterioration from an engineering point of view? Would you describe to me what letting a project lie fallow for years, waiting for funding, does to that project, its completion, and the efficiency of doing so?
It will significantly impact generating the benefits that the project was.
There will be some deterioration in the generation of work already done.
If we started physical construction, certainly that'll be the case, and we have a project that we call Olmsted that will be out of authority at the end of the year, and we'll start slowing this project down to the point where we'll be taking all the workers off of the site and just putting a security guard at it.
This is one of the, if anybody's interested in government waste, this is one of the greatest wastes one could even imagine, because if you ever get back to that project, and you can't even assure me, General Walsh, can you, that you will ever get back to such a project, because the funding may not be there.
Right. Without the authority and the funding to move forward to complete a project, we would have to close it down.
So you can have a partially done project. All of that money should be counted as wasted. There's a project here in the District of Columbia was considered quite high priority, and I'm talking about the levee on the mall. And the reason, of course, that it is high priority is that all your iconic monuments are located either on the mall or in the vicinity of the mall. You had difficulty with the contractor. I've been briefed on that. What is the state of this levee project on the mall to protect the National Mall, where you were only funded for Phase 1, and what will come of Phase 2?
Well, we'll be able to use the funds appropriated to move forward as far as the funds are available. Hopefully, it'll be enough to finish up Phase 1. As you mentioned, we have had a challenge with the current contractor, and we have moved him off the site and has asked his surety, his insurance bond, to come and take that project over. The district commander is still in negotiations with the surety.
Is there any chance that the levee on the National Mall would be left unfinished?
If there's not enough funds, then we would not be able to finish the
But you say the funds had been appropriated. You had problems with of course the contractor. You have surety. Now that you have surety, can you assure me that with the available insurance, the mall levee will be completed?
I can't give
at least phase one.
I can't give you that assurance right now, but I will talk to the division and district commander and respond to you.
I wish you'd get the response to the chairman, who I'm sure will let me know within 30 days.
Okay.
Thank you.
Time's expired. Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question, General. There is a list of final reports that are still under development. And we have 4 projects in the Everglades I know you know about, and there's one that's still not finalized, which would be the 5th project. There is an italicized date here of December 2013, which would be this year, the potential of it being finished. There is, though, a little sub thing that says, barring any legal problems, the project is the Central Everglades pilot project, and there is an ongoing, decades-old lawsuit dealing with water quality, and I would assume that would be maybe the biggest holdup. I don't know, but my question is there any guarantees that could be settled before the end of this year, or anything that might be able to tell me about that we could finalize that after? I mean, it's been going on for a long time.
Yes, we're working on it diligently. We brief the Assistant Secretary of the Army fairly often on that particular project. I couldn't, guarantee we're going to have it done, but we're putting the appropriate amount of effort to make sure we can deliver on that.
Would it be true if we were to stay with the way it's done right now in the 2007 water bill, and policy would remain the same? If we miss that deadline for getting the chief's report in, it would have to wait till the next passage of another water bill in order to get included. Would that be true?
What we're looking at in particular, people sometimes think that it just needs a chief's report submitted to Congress. What it really needs is a chief's report gets submitted to the administration, goes through administrative review, and then sent over to Congress. I believe the current authority is those chief's reports that come through the administration are available for the Congress to authorize.
Yes.
So it would have to go.
I was only looking at my next step, which is a big step, is getting that chief's report. Yes.
Next step is a chief's report, but it won't be over to Congress until it comes through administrative review.
But my question is, if we miss that deadline, we would have to wait. If current policy stayed in place, we would have to wait until the next water bill in order to get that project moving.
That's yes, that'll be the next opportunity for regular order to pass an authorized project.
Okay. Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you, Congressman.
Mr. Nolan, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And General Walsh, thank you for your service and your testimony here today. I just got a couple of quick questions here. I don't know if you can answer them or not. I hope so. A person who is quite familiar with the committee and the Army Corps and some others have suggested to me that in reviewing the chief's reports over the years that perhaps as much as 2/3 of the projects that have been concentrated in the southern United States. And perhaps that's a result of Katrina and the BP oil spill. But the states of Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Alabama, and Florida. How much of the total Corps budget, in your judgment, is spent in the Katrina impact area versus elsewhere in the United States?
Congressman, the Congress authorized $14 billion to build the flood damage risk reduction system around Greater New Orleans, and so that large amount of funds kind of changes the ratio of what things look like from around the U.S. So I don't know what data your friend gave you, but certainly that $14 billion is we're about $11 billion into that particular project. $3 billion left to work that.
So if you exclude that, take that out of the picture, how does it apportion across the country, do you think?
I hadn't looked at it from that perspective, Congressman. I've worked as a district commander in California, in both San Francisco, Sacramento, and we had plenty of enough projects there to work on. I was the commander for South Atlantic Division, and we had a number of projects also on the southeast. And then I was a commander for the Mississippi Valley Division. We had so from where I was sitting, it seemed to be evenly placed, but I never sat down to work the numbers or the authorizations. It really, what would depend on what data that you're looking for, authorized projects or funds, or I'm not quite sure what.
Oh, just trying to get a feel for where all the projects and all the money is going. One other unrelated question, but an important one, and that is how much additional revenue do you estimate is needed for the Corps to meet what the Corps perceives to be the nation's existing needs?
So I don't know if I could I have an answer to that. Certainly the water resource needs of the future in America is going to become more acute. I think oil was the significant liquid in the last century. Water is going to be the significant liquid in this century, certainly in the United States. As we continue water becomes more dear, we're going to have significant problems like we have between Georgia, Florida, and Alabama on who's going to be able to take water out of the river. The same thing with the upper Missouri and the lower Missouri states are arguing over water as well. I think they're going to be more acute in the future, and we're going to have to address those as we get to it.
Are you reasonably certain in your mind that we will need additional revenues to meet the ongoing needs of the future?
Yes, Congressman. We are going to have to address the water problems of this nation in the future.
And that will require more revenue in your judgment?
And that will require more authority and more funding.
All right. Thank you very much, General, for your service and the great job you guys do.
Thank you, Congressman.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you. General Walsh, Mr. Brown, thank you for being here. Jen Greer, thank you also for being here. It's always nice to embarrass the staff once in a while as a former staffer.
I try and do that as well, sir.
Well, good. Jen and I have worked together since she was at the St. Louis District, and I've had the pleasure of working with the St. Louis District personnel and Rock Island District personnel, Louisville District personnel for the last 16 years. You have some fine people that work for the Corps of Engineers, so thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Congressman.
I want to center most of my comments and questioning on the Metro East levee project in southwestern Illinois. As you may know, the levee district, a local levee district, was created in 2009 called the Southwestern Illinois Flood Prevention District, which was set up to bring in revenue to provide the local share of upgrading our levees that protect many of the areas in southwestern Illinois. It seemed at that time that FEMA was going to go through a de-accreditation process to move the levees to de-accredit them, to put them in much more of a flood hazard zone, and therefore rising costs for many of my constituents and Bill Enyart's constituents in southwestern Illinois. The locals have done their job. They've put together the plan of action. They have made sure that they have gotten a revenue source to be able to move projects forward, and they're a little frustrated right now. The first issue that has been brought to my attention is that there seems to be multiple layers of review in the St. Louis District and in Washington, D.C., and it seems to stall the project to the sense that we're sometimes fighting a battle of who's going to wait the longest, FEMA or the Corps or the locals, to actually get this project done. At a time when federal funds are limited and we're asking these local sponsors like the Southwestern Flood Prevention District to take on more responsibility for improving these deficient levees, what's the Corps doing to expedite and streamline the technical and regulatory review process of these locally sponsored projects? In particular, in the Metro East, we have projects that are designed by private engineering firms, licensed professional engineers with documented expertise, but it seems these designs just get caught up in these layers that I mentioned. So can you explain this and answer this question?
Yes, Congressman. By the way, what the local levee district was excellent in bringing in revenues so that they can fund the projects that they need to move forward. The Metro East project was authorized to provide about 500-year level of protections, and the locals want to work through, not go right to the 500. They want to go through a 100-year level or 1% chance of flooding through the 500 year. We've been working very closely with that board and making sure as they do the engineering, we have something that's called a 408, and make sure that they're doing the engineering correctly before they significantly influence that levee. If we wouldn't want, and I think you would agree, we wouldn't want them to do something on a levee that protects that city that was not a tried and true method of providing flood risk reduction in that particular area. Working closely with the engineers from there, they were using a technique that we hadn't seen used in a large way in that area. So we had to make sure that it was not only cutting edge, but also going to be providing the benefits that were talked about. I think over time they recognized that was not the solution, and they've gone back and coming up with a different, more tried and true engineering solution to that project.
Well, thank you, General Walsh. My time is running out, so I'm going to throw a few things in my last line of questioning to get you to respond. First of all, when do you expect a decision that might be made so that we can move through this 408 process? Is there any other information that the locals need to provide that is subject to review, and could we get a timeline on when a decision is expected? Also, could you let me know when a decision is expected on the request by the locals for project labor agreement? I know the comment period is still open. I want to know if you expect a decision soon, and if so, when. And also, General, I look forward to working with you on a couple pieces of legislation that I've introduced. One is the private partnership, the Public-Private Partnership Act, the WIN-P3 Act. I'm really looking forward to seeing projects up and down the Mississippi and Illinois River move forward, and I'd love to hear a response on how you think that could affect the outcome of upgrading our locks and dams. And also, since I represent an ag district, we have a bipartisan piece of legislation called the Mississippi River Navigation Act. So hopefully both of these proposals that are in the Senate worded bill will be put in the House worded bill, and I would like your take on both of them. So thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Mr. Garamini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, thank you very much for the work that you and the men and women in the Corps do. It's extraordinarily important across the nation. I believe we have some issues on the Missouri or one of the rivers this morning with some levee breaks. So the protection of our population from flooding is of utmost importance. It certainly is in my district. I represent 200 miles of the Sacramento River Valley, including the Feather and Yuba River systems and the Delta of California. For us here in the dais, we have a responsibility. We just took $250 million out of your budget for this year in sequestration and asking you to do more. I don't think that's responsible for us to do such a thing, but we did it. Hopefully we can replace that money and more. The earmark is an issue. We've had many discussions about that in this committee. and we really need to get at that. It's something that's very, very important. We have the responsibility, and we've foregone that responsibility by eliminating our ability to direct projects, and I think we all know that. We really ought to find the courage to revisit and overcome the earmark. Specifically, General, you mentioned the 408 in the previous question. We have a 408 issue on the Sutter Butte levee project, the Feather River program, about 40 miles of levee of utmost importance to Yuba City and the surrounding communities. I know this is being processed, and I thank you for the work that's being done in getting that 408 approved and out of the way. There are no issues, but if there's a further delay, we will miss this year's construction on a section of the Feather River levee that has broken twice in the last 40 years. Earlier, many lives were lost. This is a Shanghai Bend portion of that. I ask for your attention to that, and if possible, quick action on it so that that project can get underway. It is not federal funding involved here. It's a local program and state. Beyond that, there are going to be many issues. The water bill that's been passed by the Senate only authorized those projects that have a chief's report at the time of enactment, which will probably cause projects that are important to members in this House and maybe some senators to be delayed, as was discussed a moment ago, for some period of time until there's a new water bill. I think we ought to take a very close look at that. General, your comments on this would be appreciated. How can we overcome that particular problem where we would be dependent upon a chief's report until there's a new water bill, which could be years in the making?
Congressman, both the chairman and the minority had talked about that in their opening statements. When the Water Resource Development Act started in the 70s, it was under the impression that it would happen every 2 years. It hasn't, and that's the method to authorize water resource projects. So I won't comment on the Senate on the Senate piece, but getting back to regular order, as mentioned by the minority member, probably is the approach.
I suppose that wasn't a fair question for you. That's a question for us, I suspect. So my apologies, General. I'll let it go at this. If you just take a quick look at the Sutter Butte project on the Feather River, the 408 issue is before you and your shop, and quick review. All of the issues were addressed in the earlier review, and if you can pop that out, it would be very helpful, and we can get that project underway this summer in anticipation of next year's rain, particularly on the Shanghai Bend. Thank you very much, General, and
yes.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Yes, Congressman, we'll take a close look at it. It hasn't made it to headquarters yet. I'm expecting it this month, later this month.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, just General, California has been in the President's budget has been not well cared for, but there are many, many projects and a lot of work, and I want to once again thank the Corps and the men and women in the Corps for their work on those projects throughout California, and we really appreciate it. Hamilton City and others. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Riddle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, General, for being here. I'm over here. My name is Reed Ribble. I'm from northeast Wisconsin, including the cities of Green Bay and Appleton, so right on the shore of Lake Michigan there. And I apologize in advance if my questions are redundant from something you've heard here before. I had to step out of the room for about 10 minutes, and somebody else might have talked along the same line. But I've heard a lot of comments today about how do we speed things up? How do we make this more efficient? How do we actually get there? And based on your testimony today, it sounds like a project typically begins with a reconnaissance study, which, when that's done, initiates a feasibility study, which is 6 steps in the feasibility study. Concurrently going on, there's a NEPA study. There are a series of checkpoints during the study to make sure you're applying with laws. And then after that, there's a quality review of the study. After that, there's an agency technical review of the quality review, and then an external peer review. Going on into your testimony, the MSC commander performs a quality assurance review on documents that they're going to transmit to Corps headquarters, which then Corps headquarters performs a 45-day policy review in advance of the Civil Works review. After the CWRB determines the report is sufficient, they release, the study is released for a 30-day state and agency review. After the state and agency review is done, the report of the Chief of Engineers is finalized and processed, and the final package includes the agency responses to that. A signed report of the Chief of Engineers transmits a recommendation to the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. It then goes to there. Upon receipt of the report of the Chief of Engineers, shall review and provide any recommendation regarding the project to Congress within 120 days. The ASACW, prior to transmittal of a chief's report to Congress, is responsible for determining that the recommendations of the Chief of Engineers are compliant with Army policy, including applicable laws, executive orders, and regulations, which entails an additional review to make sure that there are no unresolved issues. In addition, at the end of this, you say, in addition, then the Office of Management and Budget under Executive Order 12,322 reviews the proposed project for consistencies with the principles and guidelines. Well, I'm glad that they're reviewed. I'm assuming some of these are required by law, that men and women like those of us sitting at the tables up here are making you do all these reviews. Some of them are probably your efforts to make sure that things are done right. But it seems to me that we've created a system of review that is now handcuffing the Corps from doing things that your core competencies should be able to do without these layers. And I'm wondering, is there a lack of confidence in your teams that you require all these reviews? Or how do we get to a place where we can actually streamline these things so that the process can move forward, which would save the taxpayers money and work would actually get done, which would boost our economy?
Thank you, Congrriman. Sounds like you've got our process down, and if you're looking for it is a difficult challenge to move a chief's report through all of the processes, which is why the Chief of Engineers has adopted our planning modernization process as part of his campaign plan, so that we can do a chief's report in 3 years. And so that's his requirement to us, and we're moving forward with putting those together. What that means, at the beginning of the process, we bring the 3 levels of the Corps of Engineers, the headquarters, the division, and the district, and the non-federal sponsor together, and we go through to make sure that we're scoping the project realistically. If it's a flood control project, what are the solutions to solve those? Let's look at the policy level issues at the beginning of it as we're as we're scoping the project and bringing it forward.
Can I interrupt you just for a second? Is this process the same for all projects, or is there a difference between a flood management project, which seems to be fairly complex, and maybe dredging the Harborway in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which seems pretty simple to me? Or is the process the same?
If the project is going through to get authorized by Congress, they have to go through this process to get it. Now, if it's a small project, we have a continuing authorities program for those projects that are $5 million and less. And that's an abbreviated, some people say abbreviated process. But I think trying to get to a chief's report in 3 years is a key item that we're working on. So to get through all of those hoops and hurdles that you just mentioned, and I call them hoops and hurdles, but they are good policy reasons on why we do a lot of those, particularly state and agency review and public review, because there's things that we might not have looked at as we're doing the engineering analysis, and so we're looking to get those things completed now in 3 years.
Okay, and then I would encourage you to the ability that you can to let us know what we can do to help you to streamline this process, whether it's a concurrent review system or something, because this is hugely expensive to the taxpayer, and the delay is even more costly to the economy. Thanks again for being here. I don't mean to be critical. I'm just trying to get my arms around what we can do to get a better policy going forward. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman.
Ms. Esty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I've recently had the pleasure of welcoming your crew from New England to my district a couple of weeks ago, which made people very excited to have our Corps Day, and you have an excellent crew, and want to thank you. My grandfather helped build locks and dams on the Mississippi with the Corps back in the 40s, so long history. In the past, as has already been mentioned by my colleague, Mr. Garamendi, Congress prioritized projects in the Continuing Authorities Program. Given that that is not now happening, and we're much more restricted in that, I'm concerned that the program is oversubscribed heavily. And how can you talk to us a little bit about how the Corps prioritizes projects in the Continuing Authorities Program at this point? How many projects are currently in the queue, for example?
In the Continuing Authorities Program, it is oversubscribed, and trying to get to those projects that are closest to being complete, prioritizing those, funding those at the highest that we can for capability reasons, and then bring them into a conclusion, and then going to the next one down on the list is the best way that with the capping of the CAP program, that's the best way I know to go through it, is get them to completion, then go down to and get the next one. So instead of lots of projects with limited funds, let's just work down the list.
And if you can give us any advice, for example, I have a project in my district in Meriden, Connecticut, that has matched funding coming in from EPA on some elements, on brownfields, funds coming in from the state government on a variety of different issues. Is that something that would receive additional priority because you already have committed funds, HUD funds, and elsewhere?
It would certainly be included in the thought process in regards to prioritization. But again, I don't know where that project is in how close it is to completion. So I would have to look at that. But certainly having more people at the table contributing funds to a particular project is something that we're looking forward to in the future. What we're looking forward to putting a budget together sometime in the future on a watershed approach. Right now we look at project by project, and sometimes a project may have negative impacts in another area. So we're looking at how to look at all of the water resource needs in a watershed. We would bring in all the federal agencies, non-governmental and local governments, and try and figure out how to work on solving the water resource needs from a watershed approach.
Well, I am very grateful to hear that, because we are not in the water-stressed regions of California, but rather these issues on watersheds where if one community does one project, you can actually just aggravate issues further downstream with flooding issues. We're working very hard in Connecticut, for example, of restoration of borders of streams. Well, that's come in conflict with levee requirements in areas from 50 years ago, and we're having a great deal of tension around that. So I think a watershed approach would actually be extremely helpful for a district like mine in New England, where sadly with the increase of severe weather events, which was my previous hearing, we were hearing about severe weather events on the Science Committee, that we're going to see more of this. And we're going to see more rapid downpours, putting stress on watersheds that previously didn't have flooding and now are going to have flooding. So again, we share concerns about inadequate funding, making your job difficult, making your task and our shared task of ensuring the safety of our communities and our citizens, putting them at risk. And we look forward to working with you. Thank you for your service. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, General Walsh, for being here today. I've had the opportunity to meet with General Walsh, and your decades of service, distinguished service, I believe him to be an honorable and bright man who's done a lot for our country, and your work on this 3x3 is critically important. The I don't think there's anything more important than keeping our nation competitive with the rest of the world. I think we're failing a little in that regard, not because of your efforts, but because of ours. And infrastructure is the key to that. It's so hard to find infrastructure dollars. And when we have these processes and regulations in place that require these lengthy studies that you have to undertake, then a lot of those infrastructure dollars end up being diverted into the studies rather than into digging ports or laying asphalt or building levees. So that is my key concern. I listened to the processes that Mr. Ribble read out. I realize that we've got an incredible amount of work to do in that regard. Certainly we have to protect the environment, but we also have to protect our economy. So anything we can do, I think we've placed you in a vice. You're caught between Congress encouraging you, pushing you to make things happen more quickly, and trying to satisfy the laws that we have in fact put in place. So I feel for you. I know you're in a tough spot, and I appreciate your efforts to do both. And I just want to know what we can do to help you accomplish that.
Congressman, I think the recognition that that infrastructure is key to the future being competitive is going to be very important. A lot of times when we talk about infrastructure, we talk about roads, rails, and runways, and sometimes we forget to talk about rivers. And so, as we, as a nation, address the infrastructure issues of the future, we need to also recognize that fourth R as we move forward. The American Society of Civil Engineers released their report a month ago that said that our infrastructure is a D, and not getting well fast. And so I don't know how it'll be a challenge to remain competitive as we move into the future, as other people are beginning to develop their water resources, such as Brazil, India, China, and others. And so I think we as a nation need to recognize that the infrastructure is tremendously important, and not so much an expense, but an investment on future benefits.
I completely agree with you and have used those same words. When I look at projects like the Port of Miami, which have taken over a decade for approval and don't involve any federal dollars, and when I look at the fact that the Panama Canal will be open for these post-Panamax ships in a year and a half, and we're only going to have 2 ports on the East Coast that can take them, Baltimore and Norfolk. I recognize that we have got to get ourselves out of the way and get these infrastructure projects built, because, you know, if they drop the cost of transporting a container by 10% and we can't take these ships, then we're placing our American businesses at a competitive disadvantage, and we will lose real American jobs. So we've got to work ourselves out of this conundrum. We've got to simplify this process. I so appreciate the fact that you've put yourself into this with this 3x3. My only encouragement to you is that we get it to a 1x1. Because when I think about the fact they've been working on this Miami Port project for 13 years, and you mentioned Brazil and India and China, I wonder how many ports have been deepened in those areas in that 14-year period. And even if we started digging today, that Miami Port project would not be completed by the time the Panama Canal is open. So it is a real serious crux issue for this country, and I look forward to your suggestions on how we can deal with it. Thank you very much, sir. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Congressman.
Gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Meadows, is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Davis, and thank you, General Walsh, for being here. Mr. Brown, thank you as well. And I don't want to address any specific projects, but I do want to go back and follow up on what the gentleman from South Carolina was hitting on, and it is about the speed of those projects. We never kill a project, we just study it. And the problem with that is we study it and study it and study it until eventually it either goes away or it gets defunded or people holler, so much that we've got to do something about it. And so with the 3x3 process, I see a lot of our problem being more regulatory and administrative law versus just laws that are dedicated by Congress. And so what I would ask you to comment on specifically is what regulatory agencies do you see, whether they be federal or state agencies, are creating the most burdensome regulatory compliance issues that you're having to deal with in order to get some of your studies done so that we can get construction to actually happen?
Well, sir, we work with all the federal regulatory agencies, state regulatory agencies.
So if you could eliminate one, which one would it be?
I don't know I would eliminate the mission of any of the agencies that are out there. Certainly, and I know you might agree if you have traveled to a lot of international places, some places that don't put as much effort in their environment, their water and air is just deplorable.
Right.
So our environmental laws, I think, were put in place and has significantly helped our environment.
So you're saying you wouldn't change any of them? Is that because what I'm trying to find out are what are the regulatory things that you're having to deal with that if you were in my position you'd say, well, let's get rid of this. And you're saying every regulation and every policy that we have out there right now has an ultimate good. I think your quote was it's good policy. So you're saying you wouldn't get rid of anything to speed up the process?
At this point, as we go through the regulatory processes, people are looking at the things that were authorized by Congress for them to look at if they're talking from a federal perspective. From the state, certainly the state historic preservation is something that we need to look at as we go through a particular project. And I think to look at things from a historic perspective is important, and we should be doing that as well. So I can't think of something that I would say this is the red star cluster that I should ask you to.
So not a single federal regulation that you would get rid of.
Not a red star cluster that I would tell you now, sir.
All right. Are there any other agencies that you would prefer to be under your purview where you don't have to work with somebody from a different agency so you can streamline the process that way?
So I think the laws of the land have put these agencies and processes into place to look at.
But let's assume that we can change the laws. What would you change?
I wouldn't be able to put that out to you right now in regards to change. We work very closely with our regulatory agencies so that we can respond to their requirements and meet the national goals from an environmental point of view.
All right. And so if we give you additional time, can you come up with recommendations that you can submit to this committee, or are we just going to have these kind of feasibility studies that are sitting here in front of me forever that 90% of the people don't read anyways? I mean, what can we eliminate to streamline the process?
What we're looking at now is again bringing the three levels of the Corps of Engineers to look at a project at the scoping mechanism. So what we're looking at is how do we scope it realistically, look at what, and so I think that's what's really going to drive a smaller project volume than what you see there to what I'm looking at is probably a 100-page report that we can bring over here to Congress. So I think we can streamline from that perspective. But having our reports go through environmental state and agency review, I think, is important to meet all of the needs of a particular project.
All right. So I'm out of time, and I'll yield back. But this last question: so, am I to understand there's not a single regulatory act or agency at this point that you would do away with to streamline the process, other than the state historic?
No, sir. I would not be able to provide a list of those things that were put in place by law and that I have to abide by.
All right. I thank the chair's indulgence. I yield back.
The gentleman from Long Island, New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to pick up where the gentleman from North Carolina just ended. We have, I thought Mr. Ribble did an excellent job of delineating the process, the overwhelming majority of which has been imposed on you by us. And so I guess I want to ask the specific question, and I know you can't answer it now, but I do know that as we are preparing WRDA 2013, there have been conversations at the staff level about how we can try to streamline the process. Can I ask that you come back to us, not now, in writing, with whether of the 21 steps, are there any specific steps that we could either eliminate or consolidate with other steps, or are there blocks of steps that we could either eliminate or consolidate as we look to go forward here?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, General. I appreciate it. I think that would be very helpful for all of us as we try to work our way through this process. The other thing I just want to sort of emphasize a point that I made earlier and then ask a question about that. When Mr. Denham asked you the questions about the project that he's interested in California and his concerns about how long it's taken, your response was that, I'm summarizing your response, that basically the funding stream was uncertain, which delayed the project, and that there was then, I won't say a disagreement, but some lack of consensus with your local cost share partner in terms of the right way to undertake the project. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a project had a long gestation period, and two of the problems were the problems that we've been talking about, which are funding and cost share partner having either insufficient funds or a different idea on how the project should go forward.
That significantly impacts the duration of a project.
So here's my question. We now have, I represent eastern Long Island. I have about 300 miles of coastline, including about 75 miles of Atlantic coast. We now have $5.3 billion through the Sandy supplemental that will go to the Corps to repair Sandy-related damage and mitigate against further damage if we are to get another storm of the same intensity as Sandy. Now, that's a lot of money. Will that not give us an opportunity to see how the Corps can work through a process when the funding stream is guaranteed, and at least in this particular case, for Fire Island to Montauk Point reformulation study area projects, the local cost share, the federal government's going to take 100% of the cost share. So that will give us a mechanism, or probably a living example for us to see how the Corps process works when it's adequately funded, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that we also had that opportunity with Katrina, right? Which we've gotten an awful lot done in a relatively short period of time with Katrina.
Yes, sir. The three things we had at Katrina was full federal funding, an abbreviated NEPA, and a commitment from the nation to get it done in a short amount of time.
I guess what I'm saying is I want to make sure we keep our eye on the ball, that we're all talking about regulatory agencies and 21 steps, and by the way, I don't mean to diminish the importance of those, but we could eliminate all of that, and if we give you funding in dribs and drabs year after year after year, projects are going to take a hell of a long time to get done, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I really much appreciate your work, and I wish you well in your retirement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Hello again, General. Hey, I left off my line of questioning. I ran out of time. Didn't give you an adequate time to respond to some of those questions, so I'd like to reiterate a few of them. First off, can you give me an estimated time of when you think the 408 permit process for the Southwestern Illinois Flood Prevention District might be all issues settled and offered?
Sure. The last time I looked at that was about 3 months ago. I'd have to get an update from that. 3 months ago, we had not yet had the submission from the local sponsor. So I couldn't give you an answer because we hadn't gotten his submission, and I don't know if we've got that yet. So I'll have to go back and look at it, and certainly can
can have one of my staff call your staff later this week and tell you where we are in that process.
Thank you.
That particular issue had us look at 408 issues, both minor 408 and major. And if it's a minor 408 issue, they can resolve that locally, and if it's a major one, it has to come to headquarters for our review. The last time I worked at that particular project, we decided that it was a major 408. But again, if the submission had changed, then it may be minor, but I don't know the details.
Okay. No, thank you very much for that. I know the locals have also requested to use a project labor agreement on one portion of construction on the Wood River cutoff wall project in Wood River, Illinois. Do you have an estimated time of when a decision will be made of whether or not that request will be granted or denied?
I think it's still out for comment, and as soon as the comment period closes, the district commander will make a decision. I'll have to have staff get back with you later this week on the time frame, because I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, thank you for that. Another one of my pieces of legislation that I talked about, hopefully it's going to be included in any WRDA bill that passes our chamber, just like it is in the Senate, is our Public-Private Partnership Act, the WIN-P3 Act, which I think could give the Corps some valuable tools to move projects that are essential right now up and down the Mississippi River in and around my district that are essential to my constituents' jobs and our local economy. Can you comment on how you think that piece of legislation or that language that's in the Senate WRDA bill and the language that's in our bill, how could it positively affect some of the large infrastructure projects that that you may be working on in the future throughout this country?
Congressman, generally we don't make comment on pending legislation, so I won't comment on either the Senate or your
but it's a good bill.
Piece of bill, your bill as well. But I think, and we're working on how to use public-private partnerships in the future. Certainly, our hydropower systems are running at about 89% efficiency. I think there's a lot, if we had more investments in our hydropower system and bring the efficiencies up from 89% to normal industry standards, which is about 98%. If we can't fund that out of the general fund, then let's bring in a public-private partnership, fund the difference, and figure out a way for him to pull his investment out of that particular project. I've got guys working on trying to figure out how to do public-private partnership in water resources in the future, and that hasn't developed far enough along for me to share yet.
Okay, I have another bill, the Mississippi River Navigation Act, that I know you can't comment on. So let me ask you, can you comment on how further study, more navigation tools for the Corps, and forecasting improvements could help the Corps prevent further problems like we saw last year during the low water on the Mississippi when it comes to navigation?
Certainly we have a project that's called NESP, Navigation Ecosystem Sustainment Program, that's work on the upper Mississippi, and we're trying to figure out how to forecast grain prices 50 years from now, and that's challenging to do and put together a decent cost-benefit ratio on that. But we are still looking at what kind of tools can we use to pull that together. So we're working that. In regards to floods and droughts, it's beginning of this year we're in the flood stage, and we were briefing everybody that needed to be briefed, and 2 months later we're in a drought stage, and we had to blow up the pinnacles down in the St. Louis area, and now we're in flood stage again. I don't know. Certainly working with the director of National Weather Service, I don't know if the climatologists were giving us this variability in the last 4 months. I don't know that we have a tool that could do that. But certainly we're working with what I call the fusion cell between the Corps of Engineers, the National Weather Service, and the USGS to figure out how and where should we be investing resources so that we can have a better predictability on water and water resources.
Well, thank you very much for those comments. I'm concerned about the flooding that's going on right now. I understand that you have to deal with a wide variety of issues, droughts, floods. Thank you for all your district service in helping to fight the floods along the Mississippi right now. My heart goes out to the hard work that they're putting in on a daily basis. We want to give you more flexibility to be able to address those situations, which is why I put that bill forth. So if that's something we can do to allow you to come in and address emergency situations, I think we should work together to make that happen. Now my last line of questioning has to do with infrastructure. As I mentioned before, I've been working with your local districts for upwards of 16 years, and we've talked about upgrading large lock and dam projects along the Mississippi and Illinois. I've heard comments from the Corps that even if we were to fully fund those projects that are authorized, that it would take upwards of 40 years to complete the project. Could you comment on the length of time that you think it will take to actually upgrade the locks and dams along the Mississippi and Illinois rivers?
Right now, the funding stream is restricted with the Inland Water Trust Fund, which generates about $80 million a year, and out of the general fund comes another $80 million, so $160 million a year to get do the major work on the locks and dams. And so with that small funding stream, we're just not going to be able to keep up with the infrastructure that needs to be repaired. There's a lock down in Louisiana. It's called the Inland Harbor, and it's 89 years old. As you go through that and the locks open and close, you can see the concrete falling off the lock walls into the river. We're not going to get to that at this current funding stream for another 15 years before we get to that particular lock. So it's going to have significant impacts on our infrastructure with the funding stream as it's currently structured.
I completely agree, which is why we have our WIN P3 legislation that we're hoping to pass. I'm concerned, too, about Olmsted. I think the Corps had the best intentions to build this in the wet and to come in as close to budget as possible, but going from $775 million on a 7-year construction cycle to $3.1 billion, we've got some issues when it comes to large infrastructure projects. What has the Corps learned in constructing that project that we can then take away to ensure that we don't hit those limits again or exceed them again?
One of the issues that we're having with the Olmsted Lock and Dam again is the amount of funding that we can bring to that project. At $120 million a year is just a struggle to put together an efficient program to get that complete. What we've demonstrated down in Louisiana is give us, and Mr. Bishop already talked about that, and the same thing for Hurricane Sandy, full federal funding, and we can go get it accomplished. In this case, we're taking federal funding and trust fund funding and moving forward at this little amount each year. The other piece is I think we just did not put together a good cost estimate when we initially put the project forward. So what we're looking at now is we put together a center of expertise on cost reviews. That's in Walla Walla. So every big project that we have, we send it over to Walla Walla. They make sure that we're doing a fair job saying how much it's going to cost as we move these projects forward. This particular project
we will be pulling the men off of this project, and right now we have 3 shifts. We'll be pulling them off at the end of the year because there's not enough authority for us to put any more funds in that project. So it'll have a significant impact on the benefits that were supposed to be derived from this project because of the funding, because of funding authority at this point.
Well, I hope we can work together to come up with a solution to that issue and a solution to make sure that that project's completed. I want to thank you again, General. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for being here. Thank you, Jen Greer, for being here too. He pointed you out this time. Thank you all for attending this hearing, and the hearing is adjourned.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. General Walsh. General Walsh. General Walsh. You can go that way.
Is it easier just to put it, we have to go back around? Is it easier just to get back
It doesn't matter. Whatever. We just need to know because of different.
I'll have